Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, your home for heavy strategy, awesome theme, and everything in between. Check us out along with other great podcasts at DicetowerNetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 133. What is the deal with Deckbuilders? Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to the Every Night is Game Night podcast. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a singular topic today, and we have a singular host. I am here to talk about deck builders. I've gotten a bunch to the table that have been really fun. Deck builders are not normally something I especially seek out, but I happen to have a couple here that I've really enjoyed, and I'd love to share them with you. And then talk a little bit about deck builders in general, put up some polls, and I'm eager to share some of your reactions and my reactions to those. But before I get to all that, I have had something kind of bubbling up on my mind that I wanted to share with you guys, get some thoughts. So I've been listening to a couple of other board gaming podcasts, other types of podcasts, and some of them begin with a little bit of chit chat. What do I mean by that? So the hosts, they just kind of like go back and forth and talk about their day. They kind of get themselves warmed up a little bit, and then they launch into whatever they're going to talk about. I'm thinking in particular of Sporadically Bored, which is a podcast that's kind of new. I think they're only like 20 or 30 episodes in. Mike and Dan were good enough to contribute clips to our award show and also allow me to give a little bit of a pitch on their show. They begin with a lot of chit chat. I think their last episode was something in the range of 2 hours. Much of which is that kind of stuff. You could definitely tell the hosts are, friendly and everything. It's funny because we actually do that too. Like when me and Anthony are on the pod, when I have Liz and Jeremy and everything, we do that. I just don't record it. Or I do record it, but it doesn't make it the body of the show. I guess my personality is I like to just get into stuff. I like to get into the games. I like to get into, kind of get focused. And if we're going to have fun in that context and keep things to under an hour, generally for episodes. So I don't know, what do you think? Would you guys like to hear more of that? Would you like to hear me, kind of grumble about parenting and some of my clients who are like going crazy, or some of those little things that happen during the day? Do you want to hear about some of our guests, their little everyday foibles that we talk about before we launch into the show? So you guys like to know, I like to change up format. It's not the same show every time. So if you want to hear more of that stuff, please hit me up, ENGN_podcast on the Twitter, Every Night is Game Night Facebook group. On BGG, I'm user Pope6. Go ahead and send a direct mail. I am always willing to take feedback on the show. If you want to hear more about just the human side of us, just chit-chatting, doing our thing, then let me know and I'll try to work it in. Or maybe you like ENGN just the way it is and you want us to keep on keeping on. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, so as I was saying at the beginning of the show, I am going to talk about deck builders today. I have 4 good ones here. I have Subatomic, Dale of Merchants, Shadowrift, and Aeon's End Legacy. Got a chance to get those to the table, multiple plays, playing with different groups. Got some thoughts about them I'm eager to share. Also, I've put up a bunch of discussion topics, as I was saying before, on BGG, especially on the Every Night is Game Night Facebook group. You guys get priority whenever people make comments, and it's like the same comment across multiple places. I'm going to look at ENGN and quote from that source just because I want to give you guys a special shine. I appreciate every single one of you. But we had some good discussion on what is the big deal about deck builders. Why do people kind of resonate with those as opposed to other mechanics? What are some of the difficulties that people encounter when it comes to deck builders? I'm going to break that all down for you. Looking forward to it. But first, we are going to get to Liz in the Liz We Trust segment. I specifically requested this particular game. It goes with the episode. So I actually know what the game is today.
Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here to encourage your Every Night is Game Night acquisition disorder. Today I want to talk about the Valley of the Kings Premium Edition, designed by Tom Cleaver and published by Alderac Entertainment. Valley of the Kings and its expansions were originally published as 3 small box standalone games, but now you can get the original and the expansions with larger cards and upgraded art. In Valley of the Kings, you can take it with you. This is a deck builder in which you use your starter cards to acquire more and more powerful artifacts to stash in your tomb. But there's a catch. You only score for cards that actually make it into your tomb, which means that you need to remove those cards from your deck and entomb them instead. This game also has a solo mode that sees you trying to entomb one of each card in the game. At the master level, you'll try to achieve that goal using only actions on your cards without any free entomb actions on your turn. There's also a new variant that I have yet to try, in which you can play against a dummy deck. I definitely enjoyed this game, and if you are either looking for an upgrade or have always been curious but never taken the plunge, Valley of the Kings Premium Edition may be your choice. Happy gaming!
All right. Thank you very much, Liz. You can see why I requested that particular one. Valley of the Kings is one of my favorite deck builders. Very, very small. Usually deck builders kind of come with a deck of cards and stuff, or tokens or a board or something. This is just a deck of cards. Or was just a deck of cards. As I record this, I don't know exactly what the details are going to be for the new printing, the premium edition, but I do know tarot-sized cards, includes all 3 expansions. It's probably going to be pretty pricey. I can already see people complaining on the boards about potential costs and all that kind of thing. But if the original gameplay is still the same, I'll definitely recommend that you at least take a look and see if it's worth the back or not. All right, let's talk about some games that you can get your grubby little hands on right now. The first game I'm going to talk about is the lightest game on the slate, which is Subatomic. This was designed by John Caveyu, published by Genius Games. Genius Games is known for their family weight science-based games. They have a lot of different titles. They have Cytosis and Covalence and Aeon and all different genres too. So you got little worker placement and Covalence is kind of this Hanabi-ish cooperative game. This one is the deck builder, and it is for 2 and 4 players, and it is definitely aimed at the family. So in this game, you are building atoms. Your starting little deck is comprised of subatomic particles like quarks and photons. What you're going to be doing during the game is you're going to be buying these advanced cards, which are protons, neutrons, and electron clusters. Imagine that. And as you go through the process of buying the cards, improving your deck, and cycling and all that good deck builder stuff, you also have this personal board which represents an atom that is growing with protons and neutrons. You're playing these clusters into this little personal atom, and eventually you are going to want to buy these bigger atom cards, so like helium and beryllium and all that kind of thing. If you know science, you're geeking out right now. If you don't know science, I don't know what to tell you. It definitely kind of evokes the science theme. There's a whole insert that talks about the science backing behind it. All of the Genius games pretty faithful to the science theme, and that's one of the reasons why I really dug it. Spoiler alert, I enjoyed this game, partly because I'm not a science person, but I do enjoy the educational piece and playing with people who are like learning about it, so that was cool. So the goal of the game is to get points. The points will come from mostly the atom cards. So if you save up for like a really big cluster of atoms, you're going to get a lot of points. Or you could kind of, go for low cost atoms like helium, which are the simplest ones. You could just kind of like boom, 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 get it. It's definitely a race, this game. So you're going to see on the description on BGG that this game has a lot of quote unquote strategy. Oh. Not quite, for the main reason that there's not a lot of text on the cards. Anybody who is experienced in deck builders knows it's kind of based on text on cards. I mean, that's what Dominion was all about. You had those cards, +1 action, +1 buy. If you do this, do this. That's how you differentiated all the cards. Here, it's very simple, symbol-based system, and you're just going to be putting those in your deck. And that's how you do it. So there are special cards with text you can buy. They're the scientist cards. You are going to be building up this separate currency called energy, and you can buy Albert Einstein or Marie Curie, or see these different scientists that can, kind of wrinkle up gameplay, give you a special power. Not really sure how useful they were. Felt like, going for them is a little bit of a sidetrack. I'm sure there's ways to use them. And I think Marie Curie in particular is kind of a beast. You get her, you could really, lay the smackdown and everything. But for the most part, I didn't know how well the scientists were integrated. I think the main part of the show, especially for people especially for the intended audience, which I think is definitely younger, I've played this with non-gamers who are like, 10 to 12. Yes, I did bring it to therapy. It's another therapy game, and I had a lot of success with it. If you're, science-minded, you might, go for a little bit smaller, 8, 9, 10 age, something like that. But so within that age range, I really, really like this game. It teaches the fundamentals of deck building. One of the things we're going to talk about is that every deck builder kind of has a common set of rules where you have a hand a card, you draw 5, you play all 5, and when you buy card, they go into your discard pile. This is stuff that every person who knows deck builders knows. This is a great way to teach that. And also, there's enough there. I'm not going to say it's the most strategic thing in the world. A lot of times when I play games like this, I kind of hunger for a solo mode. And I know some of their games, Ricky Woy, I think, did a solo mode for Cytosis, so I can play on my own. I don't know that I'm craving a solo mode here because the gameplay is so simple. If I'm going to play solo, it's either going to be something that's, like a simple card game or something meaty and complicated. This is right in the middle, which I think is kind of a no man's land when it comes to solo. But in its lane, I can really, really recommend Subatomic. It's what I think of as like an evangelical game. You can convert people with this game, and you're going to have fun. It's not the most complex deck builder that you've ever played, but it's fun. It's a good race. There's some decent little strategies, little tactics. I wouldn't say strategy. There's some decent little tactics in this game. So tactics being kind of the short term, turn by turn decisions. There's a decent amount of that. But for the most part, I can definitely recommend it. That was Subatomic. All right. Speaking of tactical, this game that I'm about to talk about, which is Dale of Merchants, designed by Sammy Lasco and published by Snowdale Design, amongst other publishers. This is about as tactical a deck builder as I have ever played. And to be clear about the distinction between tactics and strategy is more your long-term do a move with a vision kind of at the end of it. So you're kind of building towards this master plan that you have. Whereas tactics are the turn by turn moves that you're making in order to advance your position. This game is about as tactical as you can possibly get. For a lot of people, tactics equal luck. We will definitely get to that. But Dale of Merchants definitely doubles down on that end of the spectrum. So in Dale of Merchants, you are a merchant and you are building a stall that is going to display the wares of the different factions in this fantasy land. So this is kind of the brainchild of Sammy Lasco, who also did the art of it. He's also the designer of Dawn of Peacemakers, and the factions that appeared in that game were originally displayed in this game. They're these anthropomorphic set of creatures, and you're going to get things like raccoons and pandas and all sorts of little fun stuff. So what you're going to be doing in Dale of Merchants is you imagine yourself that you are gathering the relics and the trinkets and all these things from these different factions, and you're displaying them in your stall, and you're trying to get the best, or you're trying to basically build your stall first. There is no best one. The first person who hits a threshold is going to win the game basically immediately. So that's the theme of the game, which in a deck builder, I try to note what I can, because sometimes deck builders don't really do too much with theme, but this one, trying to get into it. So what happens is there are faction cards. So each of the factions are going to have a different deck, and they all work differently. You're going to shuffle that deck together. So it's very, very modular. So the base game has, I think, 6 or 7 factions, and then there's a Dale of Merchants 2 with all new factions, and you can kind of mix and match and create a game that it depends on your playstyle. So if you wanted to do a kind of a strategic game back and forth, you're going to want to use, pandas or something that's a little bit less interactive. If you want to really go after somebody and take that in your game, you could use those dirty, rotten, thieving raccoons, which I put in when I was playing with my friend Josh, who hates take that in his games because he's a very strategic gamer as much as possible, but he loves the color purple. So I was like, let's try purple and see what you like. He wasn't very amused, but hey, what are you going to do? So once you have this deck, it's kind of a small deck. It's not going to be very big. It's kind of like one faction per player plus an additional one to kind of fatten up that deck. It's just, a little deck of cards, and they're going to flow out like a river. So this is one of them churning markets when it comes to deck builders. And what's going to happen is you have a hand of terrible cards, and you're going to be spending those cards as money, so there's no separate currency, and getting those better cards into your hand. But the key in this game is that the better cards don't last very long. When I talked about building a stall, what that is you're going to be playing cards into your tableau, which removes them from your hand. And you're going to be doing that in sequential order. So you build 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The values of the cards go up to 5. So obviously you're going to be doing some addition. You have to do a 3-2 for the 5 stall, and 3-2-2 for the 7 stall, that kind of thing. So sometimes you're going to play a card, and you're going to play the card for the power, whatever effect you wanted to establish. But sometimes you're going to play that card, and it's just going to be removed from your hand. So obviously, if you're going to be removing cards so often from your hand, there's not going to be a lot of room to build that long-term strategy. It really is about striking when the moment is hot. When you see a card that you need or that you can make work in that river, you've just got to go right after it, get it into your discard pile, and just get it up and moving. So I have to admit, this game went against expectations for me. When you play a deck builder, you usually play to build that engine, and this game didn't present that at all. So I was like, I don't know if I would like this. But the more I got into it, the more I changed up the factions and explored different strategies, I was able to enjoy it. It's really short. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is probably the shortest deck builder that I've ever played as well. And once you get a little bit of it's not even that much, but a little bit of familiarity with the concept of the cards. And you don't even have to know each individual card. You just kind of have to know the basic personality, and then everything kind of flows from there. So I really enjoyed that. There was kind of an ease of entry that I don't find that a lot of other deck builders have. Once you get into the game and the play kind of develops, there's this tension that develops kind of towards the mid to end game, which might be a positive or might be a negative depending on how you approach it. So you're trying to buy cards, and in a normal deck builder, you're really trying to buy the best card you can. Here, you have to consider two priorities. One, you want to buy a powerful card, especially one that combos with whatever you have, but you also want to buy towards your stall. You're very limited in what you can actually play in your stall. If you wanted to build like a certain number stall, it has to be all from the same faction, which means if you wanted to build, say, a 7 stall and you have a 3 and a 2 of that faction, you kind of have to go for that 2 when it appears, and with the eye towards putting it into your stall. You're not buying for the power, which, that's a weird thing. It's hard to kind of describe. I am trying to kind of hammer the point home that when we play deck builders, we love buying like cool stuff. And when you're buying just to put a card in a stall because the math tells you to, that's not quite as exciting as, I'm going to buy this awesome card and it's going to give me this awesome power. My deck is now going to like work that way. So that's a strategic kind of approach. In terms of like the tactics, then you might want to go for that 2, or if you don't go for the 2 that you need in order to build a 7, you might have to change strategies. You might have to bury that 5 and 2 from another faction. I mean, I like it. It's a niche product. It's not something that every deck building fan is going to enjoy. I talked about Subatomic not really being open to solo. This game is definitely not open to solo. The next 2 are, so don't worry about that. This one, the joy comes from the interactions. The joy comes from the speed of it. And, the variability is great. If I wanted to play a different style of game with more randomness or more cleverness or more meanness, I can, kind of tune the powers. And I only have the base copy. I haven't actually played Dale of Merchants 2. I'm strongly considering picking that up. And if I make a subsequent purchase of a game, that's probably the best recommendation that I can give. It's very, very good in its niche. Some people will get frustrated with the luck. There is a class of gamer that equates tactics with luck. That river just flows and flows and flows. You might get the exact cards you want that line up numerically, or you just might not get that thing and your opponent gets it. Hey, this game does not apologize for that. It is so streamlined that it embraces it. It's what's going to happen. So this game will not appeal to everybody, but if a tactical deck builder appeals to you, then you're not going to get much better than Dale of Merchants. All right, my friends, now we amp up a little bit in complexity. I have 2 cooperative deck builders for you. They are Shadowrift and Aeon's Legacy. Let's do Shadowrift first. Shadowrift was designed by Jeremy Anderson. I believe in 2012 it was either self-published or with a small publisher, but it was eventually picked up by Starling Games, given a second edition. It looks all pretty and everything, and they are continuing to support the product with expansions. The last expansion called Boomtown was on Kickstarter last year, so you can go ahead and look out for those. So Shadowrift is a deck builder set in a fantasy universe. You are a hero in a town, and you are defending the town against hordes of creatures that are going to be coming in from the outside. As a hero, you start off tiny, crappy, just like in all deck builders. You have a dink little deck, and you're going to be building up into a killing machine from a fixed market. So at least on the hero end, you pick the cards ahead of time, and you just pick those, just like Dominion. The monsters, you would think like, this kind of team up versus a monster thing would be evocative of Sentinels or Aeon's End, where you have like the big monster. Here, not so much. The monsters here are a deck of cards, and they just kind of like come out in waves. Think a little bit more like Heroes of Terranoth, where the monsters just kind of pop out. So that's like the meta of the game. I'm not going to go into all that. I mean, we've been here before. I'm mentioning all these other games. What's unique about Shadowrift is the town deck. So the town deck functions as basically another hand of cards that every player uses in common. It is townsfolk like, the baker, the butcher, the candlestick maker, the sage, and all these other different cards. And they are going to kind of move towards the bottom of the board like a river. And you can use their powers once per round. So that they give you a little bit of extra to kind of think about. So there's a couple things about this town deck that I'm actually pretty excited about. First, you build that. So you have that tension. You don't just like focus on yourself and making yourself the most awesome. You really kind of have to devote some resources to the townsfolk. So they have their own market, and their own market is actually that moving river. So this deck builder has both. It has a static market for the heroes and a moving river for the town. So the town are like villagers. So like, okay, the wandering sage comes in with mystical knowledge, blah, blah, blah. And if you can afford it, you can buy that card, and it goes into your town deck. You can also have bad stuff happen to the townfolk too. You can get infiltrators, which are these problematic people that just kind of appear in your deck and you have to deal with them. You can also have monsters attack the town directly and kill people. Oh my God. And when they die, they go back, they have to get rid of that card, and you put a corpse card into the town. So the town will eventually kind of pile up with corpses, which is a pretty macabre thing. And one of the lose conditions is if the town's deck gets too full of corpses, like if you have an entire town full of corpses. I'm talking like it's a thematic thing. I'm hoping that you get kind of the mechanical idea of it. Basically, your bottom market is filled with corpse cards. So if that happens, then you're going to lose the game. So it's hard to give as like a visual. I think in very thematic terms, a town full of corpses and villagers who are kind of wandering in and, helping you and everything. Mechanically, it's, you just have to keep that river going, keep the townsfolk there. You can actually make walls, which is another win condition. You can put wall cards into the town. So if you put a lot of wall cards in, you quote unquote fortify the town, and therefore that's a win condition as well. This game does a lot of cool stuff. The central decision of this game is, do you improve your deck or do you improve the town? In any deck builder, the point isn't the effects. Like, the effects make things go and they make things awesome, but the real decision points are what you put into the deck. So it's kind of that purchase beforehand. And this game mixes that up because you're not just purchasing into your own deck, you're purchasing into the town. And you have to decide, okay, I'm just going to let the town go and manage it as best I can, but I'm really going to focus on me and making myself powerful, defeating all the monsters, getting through the deck. Once you defeat the shadow rifts in the deck, they're the shadow rift cards, and if you just move through the deck really fast, and you can if you're a killing machine, then you win that way. Or am I going to focus on the town and just let the monsters do their thing? They just like pick off villagers, and then you can resurrect the villager, and so you can play this kind of offense defense thing. And you can't just do one or the other. You have to make decisions on how much offense and how much defense and all that kind of thing. Another thing this game does that I think is really smart is it gives you a lot to do with your leftover currency. A lot of times in deck builders, if you may rebuild a really good deck, but just your draw doesn't work with you, so you end up with either all this extra currency or maybe not enough currency. It just kind of like it's hard to manage. In Shadowrift, there's enough things to do with your spare currency. You can buy a coin, which you can use later, so that becomes alternate currency. You're kind of setting it aside and into this permanent currency that you can use later. You can buy these little cards that are decently effective. They don't glut your deck like sometimes you'll have like an Ascension. You can do this. You can buy like the regular attack card and the regular money card, but that quickly also becomes kind of not great in terms of your deck. But so those extra things that you can buy actually either combo off of what you already have, or they give you more draw so they don't kind of hold you up. This is an early deck builder. Like 2012 is a little bit before some of like the later innovations that have made deck builders so fun, but there's a lot here that reflects development in that deck builder space, and I really appreciate that. Guys, I really like this game. I didn't expect to like this game so much because, like I said, it was an earlier deck builder, and it looks like this kind of big honking thing with the static market, and there's just a lot of decks of cards. I really got into it. It felt thematic. Like, it's the most thematic deck builder that I've ever played, and I'm including Legendary Alien. I think people would point to that one as a very thematic game because, the aliens are face down and they pop up and a little horror screamer and everything. That's definitely way up there in terms of, a deck build that evokes a theme. And that's a low bar because not many of them do. I thought this one, in terms of the ongoing, now my town is in peril because there's all these corpses in there and there's this heretic running around, which is another infiltrator card in the town deck that is causing me trouble, making it harder for me to cast spells. The villagers coming in, like the town deck makes the whole game for me. It's not much of a game outside of that, and that's a good thing because you don't want a bunch of effects happening. Like, you don't want too much in there, and this game kind of goes on that border of having too much in the same package. But the deck building itself is simple. The town building is simple, but evocative of some theme. Monsters, they're interesting. I mean, put it this way. I don't know. Did I know of a deck builder where the monster deck or the enemy deck is the draw? I think it's more on the hero side that's like fun. And, you just want those monsters to be out there putting up opposition. But they do. The game is really hard at first when you're learning it. Eventually becomes a lot easier, especially if you kind of get good at crafting the market to what you're doing. If you randomize, it's just like, Sentinels or something else, where if you randomize, you could come up with something that just doesn't work at all, or something that just completely creams the enemy, has that issue. I'm talking like this game is Sentinels. It really does have a lot of Sentinels issues. One being that variability that may be a little bit too open-ended. They do suggest different layouts to balance the game, so I'd suggest going with those, at least until you know stuff. It's fiddly. I'm not going to lie. This game is fiddly as all get out. If you watch Colin's playthrough of this game on One Stop Co-op Shop, he spends a lot of time shuffling and resetting the deck like that. In between, resetting between rounds takes a long time. And the other fiddly bit is that there's a system of wounding your heroes where anytime you attack an enemy, you take a wound. And sometimes enemies just give you wounds. And sometimes you have effects that give you extra wounds. And they're the cards. They're these cards that they're boring and they're just there. They're named wound. And they go into your hand and they go in and out and in and out. So you might have a hand of, you might just get a whole bunch of wounds into your discard pile and you just can't do anything. And you basically spend the entire time paying to remove those wounds, which is not fun, and you're not really getting too much done. That's bad play, but even if you're playing well, you might come to a point of game circumstances where you just got a lot of wounds in your hand and there's nothing you can really do about it. That's not great. And just the physicality of removing the wounds, putting the wounds back. I mean, it's a very kind of clumsy experience, I thought. So I'm going to put those two things out there as why maybe this game hasn't hit as hard, because that's really core. I mean, if a game isn't like usable, a game can be great, mechanically interesting, but if at the point of user interface there's difficulty, then I could see a lot of gamers going, I don't know if I'm going to like this. If you overcome that though, if you get into the theme of it, if you get into, different strategies of how to build the hands, and there's very different ways that you can approach the deck building. If you can get into the town deck and, different ways in which you can manipulate the town, and then with the expansions, there's just more and more options. Getting over that usability hump and that fiddly hump, there's a lot here. I am absolutely keeping this game. I got it with one expansion. I'm gonna seek out the other expansions. Oh my goodness, I am really, really pumped to play more and more Shadowrift moving forward. My last review will be Aeon's End Legacy. I'm hoping this is the shortest one. I have some things to say, but it's basically Aeon's End. We've covered Aeon's End before. We had the designer on last year for an interview. Aeon's End is, constantly cited as the best deck builder, really high up there in the solo game rankings. So I'm not really sure if I need to go into chapter and verse of how it plays and everything, and I don't want to. Let's get to Legacy. Legacy is the second big box expansion. There's a lot of little box expansions. This is the second big box expansion. And yes, it is an expansion. Once you finish the Legacy part of the campaign, which can run you, I think, 10-ish sessions, depending on winning and losing, all that kind of stuff. So you're going to get a little bit of play out of it. All that stuff that you've opened is going to be integratable into the base game. So I'm going to treat it as an expansion. What do I think? It made me really giddy and really mad all at the same time. I have complicated feelings about Aeon's End Legacy. Let's start with the giddy first. It's Aeon's End. Aeon's End is a really fun game. I realized that even though I really liked it, I hadn't really sunk my teeth into it. I've only played a couple of games of the physical version, maybe like 5 or 6 kind of spread out over however long the Aeon's End has been released. I knew I liked it, but it's just a lot to play. Having the chance to sit down and just bang through an entire campaign, and I haven't finished the campaign, but I'm at the last part. I think I get it at this point. What this game is, what Aeon's End Legacy is all about. Guys, it was so much fun. It's so fun to play an ongoing campaign of this, to have the character, and in regular Aeon's End you don't really change the character. In Legacy you do. You get the stickers, and you can choose the different powers, the different charge effects and everything. The market also changes, so you have that static market, but they introduce a pile of new potential cards to put in, and you have to make a decision between games of, do I put in, you have to put in 2 and you have to remove 2. So how do I mold my market? So the process not only of developing your character, but developing your market in tandem with the character, so that you can get off the effects, the combos that you want. Eventually, I played this with 2 players, me and my friend. We really crafted this game and we became killing machines. There was a point in the middle of the campaign where we were just rocking it, and the monsters didn't stand a chance. Eventually, the game kind of found a way to get it back at us. Basically, we designed our engine for card draw, so we were always drawing 6, 7, 8, 9 hands of 10 cards. But then the monsters figured out, oh, let's just attack Gravehold. They're ignoring it. So we were able to kind of overcome that. But I remember that, and it's a kind of a charming thing that I was engaged enough with the story to remember that little detail, powering up and everything, and just firing off those combos is so satisfying. Oh, it's so much fun. I was so happy with that part of it. Then, in terms of the actual Legacy part, there's one part that I liked, which was this mechanic called the Evolve deck. So if you know Aeon's End, the monsters have the monster personal cards and then basic cards. The basic cards in this game, quote unquote, evolve, where you see it and they get a sticker, and if you see it often enough, they get enough stickers, you sub it out. You go into the Evolve deck and you get an improved version of that basic card. So let's say the basic card is this weenie little monster, worth 3 hit points. If you see him often enough, he's going to be like, okay, enough of this. I'm getting my dad. So the dad comes in, and it's this more powerful version of the monster. Doesn't break the game, but I thought it added a little bit of personality. I thought it was very cool. So the Evolve deck was good. Now the parts that made me mad. Oh, there is 0 story. 0, negative story. I think that it was so bad and so forgettable that it just made me mad. I know Kevin Riley, the designer, doesn't have anything to do with the story. He doesn't care. Or maybe he does cares at this point, but definitely at design point when Aeon's End was being made from the ground up, it was not made with any kind of theme in mind. Theme is being injected after the fact, and you can definitely tell. The story is lame. The story is generic. It is forgettable. Constantly, I'd be asking my friend, okay, what are we doing now? Are we supposed to go to some sort of rift and close it? No, we're just fighting a monster. What is the point of a legacy game if the story is going to be lame? Yes, I know it made me happy for the mechanical kind of development of my character, but I can do that with a campaign. Like, I can do that. Any kind of ongoing story provides that. Legacy should provide story. Legacy, the whole point of it, the whole point of the stickers is to provide that emotional investment to, carry forward this effect that you're changing the entire game, and there's just nothing, at least in the story end. That really, really fell flat for me. And just in general, the way that the monsters kind of chained together, there just wasn't enough keeping things together. That Evolve deck was the beginning of a thread that could have lasted throughout the entire game. I felt like this could have used a year more of development to really integrate the different monsters. It's just take 8 monsters and fight them in a row. Like, we can do that as users. They do that for Sentinels all the time. I have a 5 campaign arc, play these 5 bosses in a row and make these changes between the characters. Anybody can do that, It takes a designer to make the Evolve deck, and that was really good. I had a lot of good time with it. There could have been a lot more. And the part that makes me mad is the fact that it's a clear money grab. Like, calling this game Legacy, they did that for backers, and they did that for notoriety. And they, they tried, and it's not like it's completely and utterly whatever, but this could have just been a campaign, and it didn't have to trade in that legacy thing. Like, you didn't, like, the stickers didn't do anything. Like, you could have just, here, have a card, there's your buff, and then at the end of it you just reset and do whatever. Why am I getting stickers? Why is there selling a separate reset pack? That's also a flag that says, oh man, they're really trying to go for this. So complicated feelings. I'm mad at that part of it, and I probably would have settled there had I not played it, but I played it. Aeon's End is a fun game. My favorite deck builder. As an expansion to Aeon's End, setting aside my baggage when it comes to companies and legacy and my expectations, just focusing on the game itself, so good. Just I hope you don't have my baggage so that you could just go ahead and have fun and play a lot of games at Aeon's End. So that's where I'm going to land. If you like Aeon's End, this is definitely worth a pickup. If you're expecting good legacy, then I would look elsewhere. That was 4 deck builders, 4 fun games. I think you could poke holes in every single one of them. I think it's probably accurate to say that at least the first 3 that I talked about were niche products. Kind of have to be in on what they're trying to do in order to really get the most out of it. And even the 4th one, Aeon's End, the people might be really taken aback by the lack of pure legacy or good legacy in there. But they're fun, and I have a really good time with them. And I have to acknowledge that part of the reason why they're fun is that there is fun baked into any deck builder. And I wanted to break that down. Like I said before the beginning of the show, there's a lot of people that just request deck builders and love deck builders and say, okay, suggest me a good deck builder. What is it that makes deck builders fun? And, I've got some responses and I want to share them with you. So the first thing, I think this is kind of the primal thing, only because Dominion is the first deck builder, and this is what Dominion does better than anything else. It's the engine building. You start off with this rinky-dinky little deck, and then you build either a consistent turn-by-turn monster of a deck where you're just kind of churning out points towards the end of the game, or you get that kind of everything come together, one big Nova turn where it's like I draw my entire deck and I play my entire deck, and I get all these crazy things happening, starting from a little and ending in this kind of big cascade of stuff. That's what makes people feel great. You feel amazing, you feel powerful, you feel clever. I think that's what board games do in general, that feeling of cleverness, but a deck builder in particular seems to give you that lead in. You have to sow those seeds early and it pays off for you, by the end of the game. A lot of games do that. A lot of games are engine builders. What makes deck builders unique? I was drawn to a comment on Board Game Revolution group, a poster called Devil Polls, something like that. I feel like I'm being joked on over here with that name. But Devil says, thinks deck builders do it better than everything else. They are the pinnacle of engine building. I can think of no game with as strong an invisible connection of building your engine and then seeing it flourish. And I thought about that. It's like, yeah, it's probably the most visible and at the same time personal. I'll get to that a little bit more in a second, but you could see it. Your deck is tiny, it's 10 cards, and at the end it may be 25 cards, 30 cards. If you're playing Mystic Vale, your deck looks terrible. It's just a bunch of plastic, but at the end of it, you've crafted the deck. You've put in those little kind of, the little cards into the plastic sleeves, and it's kind of fat and it's kind of chunky. It looks different, and it's yours. So there's a lot of games out there that do engine building. I think of Council of Four is a Euro. I don't know how many people have played it that's listening here, but it's really good. There's a really satisfying engine building in that game, but it's all on the board. You press the button, you fire your engine, and then things light up on the board, and you get a bunch of points, and your score tracker goes up. That's how you do you fulfill some sort of condition. That's the evidence that you fired your engine. In the deck builder, you have it. It's there. It's yours. And your whole deck is in front of you. Your tableau is built. That's very satisfying. I think that Devil is really onto something. I really hope I got that name correct, or someone's not goofing on me. Anyway, so that leads into the second reason deck builders are so awesome, the ownership. I'm going off of a BGG user, Jimmy Smith. I really like the idea of taking an ordinary cookie-cutter house and building a beautiful pragmatic extension on it, and in the process creating something that is uniquely my own. I did not realize that deck building kind of related to this other thing. He made it thinking of, I think his thinking was it Flip or Flop or some other show where they do like house improvements or anything like that. But I can definitely see that. I'm actually shopping for a home now, and we're looking at basements. So I want my basement to be my own. I want it to be a gaming man cave with all my shelves and everything. And I could see turning that little dinky room into the thing that I want. Deck building is probably a good analog for that, and I'm looking forward to that process. Look forward to it in a game, and I look forward to it in real life as well. Another angle on it is from Erica Rubin. She says, I like being able to choose what I add on my deck based on what my strategy is for that particular play, especially if it's a card where there's only one or a couple of them in the deck means I might be the only one to have that ability, etc. That basement that I'm referring to, that'll be my basement. No one else is going to have that basement. When you make your stuff, it is yours. In a deck builder, it may be that, like in Dominion, you might be able to kind of buy out a pile. So there might be one card that makes your engine go, and they say there's 5 copies of it. I've seen people, and I see it, now that I think about it, I see it more often than not, where there'll be a person who just kind of buys out that pile, and then everybody else gets 1 copy or something. Your deck isn't going to function like anybody else's deck. And if it's a river, that's definitely true. So if it's a river, I remember hearing a podcast about Star Realms, and there are certain cards that'll float in. I think the person was talking about the Arc, where it's a really powerful card. And if you buy it, now your deck works that way, and no one else is going to have the deck work that way. That's a really powerful feeling. Another angle on it, this is number 3. This is from Rococo Zephyr. This one made me think. I think what we talked about before, the ownership and the engine building, I'd thought of that. This one, I hadn't really thought of at all. Rococo says, I just like buying things. Playing a deck building game is like buying things for 45 minutes. Whether you win or lose, you still get the constant rush of being a consumer. Yeah, and then it's funny, so this was in BGG. When that post happened, a lot of people were kind of quoting that post and saying, oh yeah, by the way, +1, I hadn't thought of that before. Yes, I don't know of any other game that does buying so well. It's almost like, this is a completely different subject, but hey, this is my time. I can go off on riffs. Monopoly. People talk a lot of crap about Monopoly. Yes, it's a bad game, but I don't know of any other game that gives people the feeling of having a whole lot of money in your hand and just going, wah. I can see a sense in which a deck builder kind of plays a similar role, in that especially towards your kind of mid-end game. You'll play a bunch of cards and you'll have like a whole bunch of money relative to the market. And you'll look at the market and go, ooh, it's like window shopping. Window shopping a thing. Window shopping is cool. As a therapist, I talk with a lot of people who engage in what they call retail therapy. And it's one of those things where, you're just shopping or whatever. But people feel really good when they just go on Amazon and they can buy something, or they could, walk down a mall or walk, down a main street and just kind of browse and buy stuff. It makes them feel good. It makes them feel powerful. It's fun. It's a rush. So I can see a deck builder really totally paying off on that, especially one, I guess, with static markets. If you have a static market, even a game like Machikoro, which is not a deck builder, but it's a tableau builder, kind of does a similar function. You have that effect where you're looking at the market and it's just kind of your playland. I could see it playing out a little bit differently when it's a rotating market, but hey, purchasing is purchasing and people have a lot of fun with that. Okay, so let's get back to some things that are a little bit more kind of what I was expecting. And this is our friend, Zach Chillman, who is a regular listener of Every Night is Game Night. He's on the Facebook group. He pointed out the mix of strategy and tactics, long-term planning versus turn-by-turn actions. Zach says, I enjoy the engine building, but what I really love is the combination of economic efficiency and the randomness of the draw. The randomness of the situation and how well you prepared for those moments. Strategy and tactics, the actual implementation of turn-by-turn stuff, and the strategy that allowed you to prepare for what comes out. Yes, that is absolutely true. And what I was talking about before earlier when I did the reviews, deck builders kind of slide along a scale. You can have a very strategic deck builder. I think of, a game like Dominion, which has a lot of luck, but you can build strategy around it. Or you can add deck building to another mechanism and really, kind of play up the strategic elements. I think of a game like Mage Knight, which has very limited kind of deck. It's not a deck builder, but it uses deck building as a strategic thing. That game is not very tactical at all. You have to really think through your stuff. So deck building can kind of exist on that end. And on the other hand, you have Dale Emergers, which is like, okay, what's going to happen out of the river now? So that's pretty cool. People, the BGG thread kind of got into a debate between what's better. Our friend Razupov, who's been on the show before, he runs a blog in French, and he's I've gotten to know him a little bit on the forums. He hates rotating markets. He stays away from them. Fixed rewards are rewarding. Rotating is chaotic randomness and sheer luck and people winning out of nowhere. Hence why a game like Aeon's End is his favorite deck builder. Then you have on the other side, Colin Baker, who says a rotating market is a must. If I have a fixed market, I make my strategy at the beginning and then hope it works out in the next hour. With a rotating market, I feel engaged throughout. That's a pretty cool thing when one basic mechanism can deliver satisfying game experience for people who are getting very different things out of games. Where Colin would want that engagement, that excitement. Raz is more talking about, making that strategy and thinking things through. I love that deck builder can accommodate those on both sides. All right. I think those are the main things. There's other ones. They're easy to teach. They're easy to expand. Publishers are more than willing to just release content after content. You could probably release multiple expansions per year. If you have a good deck builder, just kind of merges into the system. And there's also the idea that deck building pairs with other mechanisms. I'll get to that. I think that's a positive. I have a couple of people that don't. Clank is actually one of my favorite games, probably top 20 for me. Not everybody feels the same way. Negatives. Okay. I just alluded to the expandability of it. One of the negatives that deck builders run into is when it develops too much content. I go to David John Chase, who is in our Facebook group, the Every Night is Game Night Facebook group. Some deck builders are neat because of the variability in each game, but after a few expansions, the variability blurs together. Having potential for 500,000 unique combinations and infinite replayability is redundant. How much content can you have before it's more than one person can really experience and appreciate? It's like going to a buffet. There is such thing as too much food. There is such thing as being full. And, you want to be able to be excited about a release, but when it's just constant, it's like, oh, there's more. We just mentioned Aeon's End. Aeon's End Legacy was the second big box expansion. And then Aeon's End, the New Age came out. I'm full. I can't keep up with this stuff. I can understand that it's easy to integrate especially when the system is good. But come on. I can only play so much. I haven't even played my War Eternal stuff. I've mostly played base game, and then I moved into the legacy part. So now I'm getting another expansion. I know I'm picking on Aeon because we reviewed it here, but there's a lot of them. Dominion was supposed to be done, and we're still getting expansions for it. Really? Are they really that different? Is it really that necessary? Fans of Dominion are going to say, yeah, of course, bring it on more. But, it just, I don't know, it just feels like a big glut, and I don't know if that's a good thing. So I think I'm definitely on David's wavelength when it comes to this stuff. Another Facebook contributor, I know this guy's a blog, and I encourage you guys to go ahead and take that look. You're going to have to help me out with this name, my friend. Stin, something like that, Stijn, Lamers, on the Facebook group. Sometimes you'll buy a suboptimal card to help with a pressing issue, but you might get burned by that decision later. Now, that's a game-specific scenario. A couple of games do that worse than others. I think in terms of Dragonfire / Shadowrun Crossfire is probably the worst with it, where that game definitely every single turn you have to respond to some sort of immediate threat. You might buy a card to deal with that immediate threat, but it does not combo with your other cards, so you end up with a worse long-term experience than you could have had in a regular deck build that kind of eases off at the beginning and then puts the pressure on later. So I think that is a flaw that is inherent. Not a flaw, but a danger that is inherent in deck builders. How do you balance that short term and the long term? It's a good thing to point out. Scott O'Brien, we're going back to BGG over here, says that sometimes in deck builders, turns take too long. Scott says, the best thing about deck builders is also literally the worst thing too. My favorite thing in deck builders is to combo off and draw your whole deck and make some amazing splash play. However, my 10-minute turn, then everyone else's 10-minute turn equals a long, dragging game. Yes, I can't tell you how many times people are like, especially, I think Dominion has this problem for me, and this is kind of ultimately why I don't play a lot of Dominion or at all anymore. Because of the action economy, you have to kind of stare at your cards. Well, wait a minute, I can have 3 actions, but I have 3 plus action cards. And wait a minute, I have to try to balance this. And I'm trying to get this other action in there. I'm trying to buy a card and all of this. And it's like, dude, just go. Just go. I'm over here saying, and then me, because I'm willing to just go. I'm like sitting here going, I end up losing every single time. This is terrible. I much prefer a more kind of lighter game like Star Realms, where it's like, okay, play my cards, just add up everything. The decisions are in the purchasing, and I'm paying off that decision in my card play. Where in a game like Dominion or some of the other more complicated deck builders, there is a decision as to how everything kind of plays in practice and how this can trigger this. Should I play this first? If I play this first, then this card becomes more powerful. There's a way you do that, and then you end up with a buy and you go to the market and you look at the market. I found Mystic Vale also had that problem with downtime. I just generally don't play deck builders at a high play count. I do like them with a lower play count. Higher play count, because of the lack of interaction, that tends to be like deck builders or multiplayer solitaire, unless you really try hard to, put in the interaction. Valley Kings does that, but it's mean. You can do a lot of stuff out of your turn. You can affect people out of their turn, but it's in a very mean way. You may not want that. Other deck builders do it better. But, for the most part, I find that you just kind of sit there and you wait for people to go, and that's not very fun. And my last point that I'm going to make, the last serious point that I'm going to make, is a lot of deck builders have the issue of managing your starter cards. What an idea, right? You start with small cards, you end up with a lot of cards. How do you get there? How do you get from a thicky little thing to your big monstrous engine, right? I think that's a problem. A lot of deck builders turn into not just kind of doing awesome stuff, but mitigating your crap. So you end up buying an advanced card. The only thing the advanced card does is call. And it's like, great. That's not a great thing that I've done. All I've done is undone something that was a necessary evil at the beginning, and now it's just pure crap. So that's not very fun. Or sometimes you'll have a choice of deck milling. So you'll buy a card with a lot of draw. So like you can draw and draw and draw, and then discard. This happened to me in Dire Wild, where I drew a lot of cards and I had ended up with a good hand, but every card that I've discarded was a starter card. Like, why couldn't I just get to the good hand? Why did I have to like draw, and all I've done is like gotten rid of those cards? Like, I want to just get to a point where I don't have to do that. I don't want to have to even think about these things. I don't know that that a lot of games do this, but like, making your starter cards grow. Mystic Veil, that's one of the good things about it, is that you actually do improve your good cards. You do still end up with some dead cards in there, but for the most part, everything's improved. So I kind of like that they're exploring the technology to at least, address that part of it. But for the most part, I don't think that a lot of mainline deck builders have really solved that. That of so much of your game is mitigating bad things. Why do people hate Agricola? People hate Agricola because it drags you down. Like, you have to spend half your turn on this negative thing, feed your people. You're not making awesome progress. You're mitigating a negative. So I find starter cards to be that. So I really do wish that more games would experiment with, okay, let's take that aspect out and just like, okay, forget the culling, forget this. Your starter cards are better. Or there's some kind of like natural mechanism whereby you can replace cards. Renegade does this. Renegade, the Ricky Royal game, where you have your starter cards, but then you trade cards. You pay this card, you get another card, and now your deck is just awesome and you could just do that. More games, more please. So there's, kind of design issues around there, and sometimes you might not get to the maximum amount of fun. The last thing I should mention, kind of a joke, because one of the people in the Facebook group, who's Luke Hector, who's a good friend of mine at this point, Luke the Hater, talks about when deck building is included into other games. Come on, man. Some games do it great. Some games do it terribly. He points out like Great Western Trail is a game that I've never played it, so I can't speak to it. But some games are really good. Like, like I mentioned before, Clank's one of my favorites. Cerebria, which was a favorite from early in the year, I think it integrates deck building. You be quiet, Luke. It totally depends on the game. So there you go. I hope that you have gotten some fun and some information about what's good about deck builders, what's not good about deck builders. You got some suggestions as to deck builds that you can enjoy. I would like to do more of this. I'd like to do, I think I'm going to call the segment, What's the Deal With ... And talk about different mechanisms, talk about maybe different themes. I have kind of a percolating idea to do this with worker placement, because that's another one where people say, I want a worker placement game. If you have any other suggestions for mechanisms that you would like me to do a deeper dive on, or just anything else, please hit us up. I said it before and I'll say it again. ENGN_podcast on the Twitter. Every Night's Game Night Facebook group. Every Night is Game Night Geek List over on BGG, as well as direct message to user Pope Sixtus. Please consider giving us a rating on iTunes, 5 stars or however many stars you think we deserve. We very much appreciate that. It helps us bump up and up so that we can keep this going. I know it's only me. I know it's only me this time, and it gets a little bit difficult every now and again to kind of keep putting on episodes. But we've been really consistent weekly. I want to try to keep dedicated to that. And if you guys can help us out in any way, those ratings and the comments and all that kind of stuff really helps that out. All right, that is the episode. I will see you guys next week. Until next week, go ahead and grab a solo game off of that shelf, and let's make every night a game night.